The year is 2021, the third millennium, and the world is in interesting times. Political tensions cause anxiety around the world, climate change ravages the planet, and an unprecedented global pandemic has trapped us all in our houses for over a year. Video games and movies have been a huge deal for a lot of people, streaming services seeing a large uptick in usage, and a new generation of video game consoles has been released. There is a certain subsection of gaming that has seen a substantial rise, however, and a somewhat more traditional one at that. The hobby of wargaming, specifically the worlds created by British publisher Games Workshop, has skyrocketed in popularity since the beginning of the lockdowns in 2020. While a lot of people have found their way as new converts to the hobby, collecting and painting their very first models, freshly immersing themselves in a hobby with a rich and storied history, there is an interesting demographic that have sought out miniature painting during the lockdown, driven by nostalgia, an abundance of free time, and a bit of extra money in their pockets. A lot of millennials have found their way back to a hobby that at one point or another in their lives was important, but had drifted away from for a variety of reasons. Now, in a period of uncertainty, many have found themselves drawn back to the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, to the gods and sorcery of the mortal realms, or to the battle for the fate of Middle-earth. They have found themselves drawn back into the fold, answering the call of the Grey. My name is Rob, and I'm one of those millennials who found their way back to mini painting 4 months into the first COVID-19 lockdown, about the start of July 2020. I was as surprised as anyone. I've always had a love for the hobby, first getting into collecting nearly 20 years ago, and while I've had a couple of brushes with it in the past decade, due to money and time it was never truly feasible for me. But that all changed. I spent the first few months of lockdown across the country from my family, unable to see friends, listless and drifting through every day until it was time to go to sleep again. It was around the middle of June wherein my YouTube algorithm decided to throw some videos about Warhammer at me. Videos about niche lore topics or a rundown of armies currently available, a list that had grown substantially since 2012, which was my last brush of the game. Watching these videos reawakened something in me, and I knew rather quickly that it would need to be satiated. Hours of deep dives into the minutiae of events in the Warhammer 40k timeline, set roughly 38,000 years from now, captured my interest and I was hooked once more. It didn't take long for me to be scrolling through the Games Workshop website, browsing the available lines, seeing which spoke to me. And then I found it. The Adeptus Mechanicus, an army of cyborgs and robots, the builders of the weaponry and armor for the rest of the armies of humanity. What has followed has been months of collecting and painting, of having a drive and focus to work on something creative, something that is often a struggle for me. I didn't stick only to the armies of the Adeptus Mechanicus, however. That was only the beginning.
I suppose what really not drove me towards, what kind of pushed me towards it was, again, similarly to being in school, it was the social side of things. That kind of in lockdown, we can't go anywhere, we can't see anyone. I work from home now, so you turn the laptop off and you're like, right, it's 5 o'clock. What do I do for the next 6 hours before I want to go to bed? You can only watch so much Netflix in any given week. Modelling is fun, but never been to kind of the painting with that kind of crack behind it. So I've always found the social aspect of it is huge. I could be back into it over the course of the break, or not the break, of the lockdown.
A new edition of the game, the 9th edition since 1987, was released in July 2020, and with a new edition comes new starter sets, budget-friendly boxes that come with the new rulebook and opposing models, almost everything needed to begin the hobby. Naturally, I bought 2 different versions, to get the most for my money. But now I had 3 different armies, and still that wasn't enough. It's never enough, I needed more. I branched out to Age of Sigmar, which is the fantasy setting, and began venturing into that. At the same time, I was building dioramas, using miniatures from other game systems to build little slices of whatever lives they lived. Before long, I was buying things because they looked nice, because they looked like they'd be a challenge to paint, to push my skills and learn new techniques. And so, I wound up with this. Abaddon the Despoiler, one of the main antagonists for the forces of humanity for 10,000 years. Now, I don't collect chaos, but this model just spoke to me, and I figured it would be very nice to have in my collection.
I think it was a slow build. So, like, for the last 3 years or so, I've been playing D&D pretty extensively. I started investing in the miniatures for that. I initially started buying all of the grey miniatures that I could paint up, and then found myself at the time just being like stuck for time because I couldn't invest the time in preparing for a game as well as paint all these miniatures. So when the lockdown hit, D&D all went online, and I found myself with a bit more free time because I wasn't planning as much. I wasn't needing to put as much time into preparing what models and what scenery to bring. Myself and a few friends started playing 40k on tabletop simulator, and through that I started looking at 40k again and looking at all the new models, in particular the Death Guard, who, taking that initial interest in chaos, they were a step even further away from the normal Space Marine look. They had the boils and the tubes and all of the deformities, and I just kind of started to get the itch again.
How about some background? What is Warhammer? Now, Warhammer is a tabletop wargame, a game of skill, tactics, and chance. It comes in two main flavors, Warhammer 40,000 and Warhammer Age of Sigmar. 40k is the quintessential grimdark, far future sci-fi setting full of space marines and terrifying aliens, all ready to kill and die for their own fanatical causes. Age of Sigmar is the latest version of what began as Warhammer Fantasy Battles in the 1980s, a high fantasy setting full to the brim with magic and swords, elves and dwarves, land sharks, and legions of the undead. There is something for everyone to choose from. Want some big burly space boys? You got it. Want some robot skeletons? Right this way. I did mention the land sharks, right?
Dadneck, we have this Achillean alloped.
The variety available grows every month, with releases of new game systems, new models, and new rulebooks to help you play the game and keep things fresh and exciting. It's not the only miniature wargame out there, but they are the largest corner of the market and are often a gateway into what can seem like a daunting hobby. Social media has played a profound role in my return to miniature painting. Were it not for the random happenstance of my YouTube algorithm, I doubt I would have gotten the push I needed to be in the position I'm in right now.
So I found the online community to be absolutely huge. That even just talking to Neve there about it, I was watching a video about Trazen. He's one of the models from the Necrons, one of the characters, and she was asking kind of how big is this or how well known is this? And there is a massive community. Even going on to the likes of YouTube, you're going to find umpteen channels doing hour and a half long battle reports. Outside of that, I found a huge community on Discord. Where specifically there's ones for, obviously, well, Discord is huge anyway, but I've even found very specific communities for just Necrons. I think it's massive. It's absolutely huge. And even playing in the likes of Tabletop Simulator, there's always people looking for games. That even opening up Discord, you can see there's a channel just for people looking for games, and it's a very, very active channel.
The amount of support has been tremendous across social media platforms, and there's a real sense of community among those who partake in the hobby, whether they're miniature painters or gamers or people who create painting tutorials or battle reports for YouTube. Instagram has probably been one of the best examples of this for me. I post on my own Instagram page dedicated to my miniature painting, and I've gained a small following in recent months, just getting feedback and followers, but also just getting to see the amazing amount of talent that's out there.
In terms of the wider community, I've found myself joining a few Discord communities. It's been interesting kind of engaging with these communities and them realizing how global they are. There's one Discord community in particular that I've been pretty active in, and they have people from as far as Australia and California, and even like a large group of Dutch people involved as well. It's the escapism of just kind of sitting down, putting your headphones on, playing a video or two in the background, or even just watching a stream of somebody else painting and painting along with them. Being able to just zone out the rest of the world, being able to zone out the madness of what's going on outside, and kind of just lose yourself in painting for an hour or two, which ultimately ends up being 5.
It's been an incredibly tough year for everybody. With the reduction of in-person events such as tournaments and conventions, with the closure of shops where you can no longer go in and just buy something or spend time with your friends and play games, especially those who play games have had to completely adapt. You have to resort to other methods such as using Tabletop Simulator or Roll20, or just go without playing entirely. But I think social media has been a silver lining in this. It's given an outlet for this creativity to be seen. And with the world the way it is, I think we as a community would be lost without it. As you've been watching this, you have watched me painting this mini. Abaddon the Despoiler, the War Master of Chaos, right hand of Horus the Betrayer, who led the traitor legions against his father, the Emperor. I'm incredibly pleased with how he turned out. It gives me a sense of satisfaction that I don't really find elsewhere. As I said, I don't collect Chaos, but this is a model I've wanted to paint for a long time, and I'm really glad that I did. Unlike my friends, I haven't played a game since I was a teenager, so collecting and painting is pretty much my main outlet. Though I still have so much to learn. I may not be the best painter out there. Every day I come across pictures and videos of finished models that absolutely blow my mind. But every model I create gives me a sense of pride knowing that I did it.
Can be daunting, kind of facing into this, that you see people who break out like 2.5, 3,000 point model armies, and there is a huge initial commitment to that, and that is absolutely terrifying to look at. You don't have to start with 40k as such. You can start with the likes of, say, Kill Team, which doesn't require 2,000 models. You can have like 5 or 6 models, and that's it. You can get a taste for it and kind of go from there. When it comes to the actual gameplay itself, there is the likes of Tabletop Simulator. There's always Discord games going around that as well, so that you can kind of give that a go and see, alright, is dice rolling and kind of wargaming something I want to get involved in? Is something I want to invest time in, kind of, you know, reading up on codexes, reading up on different faction rules and everything else? I think you can get a pretty good taste for it that way. That there are definitely ways to start that don't require breaking the bank, at least not up front.
I think the most important thing with any hobby, in particular with miniature hobbies, is when you're getting into it, don't worry about what's the best model, what's the best faction, because especially with 40k and especially with Games Workshop games in particular, the rule sets are always changing, but the models are forever. You will always have those models. You will always be able to use those models in whatever iteration of the game that you're playing. So go at what you like.
My hope is that more people get involved in this hobby. If you've sat there thinking, okay, that looks neat, at any point during this, I can only urge you to seek out something that grabs your attention and give it a go. Buy a box of minis, something that looks cool to you, that calls to you, and some paints. And try your hand. The worst that can happen is that it won't really be for you and you'll be out a few quid, but for some it might spark something. It might unlock that small urge of creativity that hasn't yet found direction in the back of your brain. It may simply be the desire to learn about the stories or to put your tactical skills to the test against fellow wargamers. You may already be feeling that pull or have skills that would easily transfer to miniatures. You may already have the passion for it but didn't quite know it yet. If you listen closely, you too may be hearing the call of the Grey.